Welcome back to Time Served, the channel that scans the docket so you don't have to. If everyone's mom sentenced us, then we would all be angels and no one would be locked up. And according to this mama, he's a teddy bear. Fortunately for society, we leave this up to elected officials like Judge Boyd, and with this animal in front of us today, we can all sleep well knowing justice will be served. I do feel terrible, however, for the family. After hearing Mom, you probably will too. But you know who I really feel for in this one is the victim. Just listen to what Judge rattles off and see if Mama's teddy bear deserves probation. Tell us what you think about this lovable, huggable thug by commenting down below. Like and subscribe, set your notifications to all. Let's roll, nerds.
Is calling 2020 CR 11806, State of Texas versus Brian Pinckney. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Marcus Sanders.
For the defense?
Jonathan Pettis on behalf of Mr. Pinckney.
All right, and are you Mr. Pinckney?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to need you to speak up, Mr. Pinckney. What was his plea?
It was a no contest plea, Judge. It looks like it was on November 9th, and I believe it was Judge Angelini.
Punishment is to be assessed at a cap of 12 years. The state opposes your application. There are some cases to be taken in consideration, and there are no contact requests. Have both parties had a chance to review the PSI report?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor. We reviewed it this morning.
Any objections to the PSI report from the state?
No objection, Your Honor.
Any objections from the defense?
No objections, Judge.
All right, state you are opposed to the application. You may proceed.
Yes, Judge, and no witnesses, just argument. I'm not sure if Jonathan plans to call a witness.
Your Honor, I have two witnesses. I have the mother of Brian, who's here, and then just argument, Judge.
All right, and is this Miss Pinckney?
I'm his mother.
Do you recall when about this incident happened, Ms. Pinckney? And so you'd say he spent about a good 5 months in jail initially?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, and since his release, has he been living with you under your care?
Yes, he has.
Okay, and he's not on GPS currently, correct?
No, he is not.
Okay, whenever Mr. Pinckney was released, I believe that there's some documents here in the PSI regarding some mental health evaluations of some sort.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What medications is he taking, if any?
He takes medication for anxiety. He was diagnosed with a couple of things after he was released, and he has been compliant up to this point.
Okay, and is he drug tested regularly?
No, he has random, I guess it's random. So whenever they decide that he has to go in, that's when he has to go in.
Okay, and is Brian currently working?
Yes, he is.
How long has he been employed?
He started working a week after he was released.
Okay, and where does he work, ma'am?
He works at a restaurant, a barbecue restaurant, and he doesn't miss work. He does everything. He does everything.
Okay, and what are his duties?
He cooks, he does cashier, he does maintenance, whatever they choose to ask him to do, that's what he does.
Okay, and now we see here in this PSI report that Brian has had a little history with marijuana. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that is fair to say.
And this marijuana has gotten him in trouble, correct?
Yes, it has.
Let me ask you this. Has Brian ever been violent or aggressive towards you, ma'am?
No, not at all. Brian is a big teddy bear. Brian is a big guy. He's a big guy. So, but he's a teddy bear. He loves it. He all kids love him. Brian has brought home, I don't know how many stray animals because they're just out there.
Yes, ma'am. And does Brian have children?
Yes, he does.
And do they live with you?
Yes.
How many?
2.
And at what age?
We have a newborn, which is going on 4 months, and we have a 7-year-old.
Okay, ma'am. And are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
What is it that you do, ma'am?
I do medical claims, and I also do, I work in 2 jobs, and I also do tax preparation.
Okay, and it's my understanding that you served?
Yes, I did. I served in the United States Army.
Okay. Does Brian have a father?
Yes, he does. And his dad is he's a veteran as well, and he served in the United States Navy.
Okay, and let me ask you this. Does Brian help out around the home?
Brian helps out tremendously. I have his oldest sister, which is my oldest child. She was born with cerebral palsy and hydrocephalus. As when she was younger, it was easier for me to lift her, to help take her to the restroom, to help give her a bath. I'm up there in age at this point, and I can't lift her anymore. I can't. And Brian helps me with the bills now because it's just me. Everything is on me at this point. His father is involved, but his father was while Brian was incarcerated. His dad was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
And does Brian help out with the father?
Yes, because there's times there may be an episode where I can't get him to calm down. And Brian is a big help. Like, Brian can talk to him. Brian can help. I can't diffuse every situation. And being honest, no, maybe Brian can't either. But between that, I have other children as well. So There's times that I need just need them to be protected just so that I can get law enforcement or his VA team to come and assist me.
Okay. And ma'am, what conditions of the court are you helping Brian satisfy at the moment? And I know that he was released in March.
As far as Brian I'm going to be honest with you, Brian, a lot of this he has taken on himself. This incident showed Brian a lot, and being incarcerated was somewhere he didn't want to be. Brian has taken on the role of dad. He wants to show his kids a better life, and he's told me that many a times. And I've been tired for a while, to the point where there's days that I know that I don't know how I'm doing it, but I know that I have to keep going. And him changing, it has helped me a lot. It has.
Okay, ma'am. And let me ask you something, because it's on the PSI report. Well, let me ask you this first. How old is Brian?
Brian is 25.
He's 25 years old. Okay.
Yes.
And does he have a high school diploma?
No, he does not.
Does he have a GED?
No, he does not. I understand that my son has made mistakes. I understand that he's not perfect, but he's 25, and I would just love for him to still be able to have an opportunity to live a productive life without being incarcerated. His dad, eventually we had to tell him where his son was, and mentally already having the schizophrenia, it played a lot. It really did.
All right, anything else, Mr. Perez?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could get some testimony from my client, Brian.
All right, Mr. Pickney, if you can raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your
All right, you
Honor.
can lower your hand. All right, defense?
Brian, are you currently still employed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're working at the barbecue place, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now what the court has in front of them is they have a PSI report, Brian, and what we're looking at is we're taking into consideration the charges, the nature of the charges, and the threat posed, if any, to the community, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, during this time, you've been working for about a year now, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've been without any constraints, and you've been able to roam freely, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, looking at these charges, we see that you got some marijuana charges, and that's what seems to have been getting you in trouble. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, we're also looking at some of these other charges, which many have been dismissed, but it appears that you have one that you do have a conviction for, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, I'm sure what the court wants to hear is we want to talk about this incident in question, okay? We have complainants, Mayra Aldape, Alfonso Diaz, and Eric Alderete. Did you know any of these individuals prior to this incident?
No, sir.
And who knows these individuals?
Um,
How did you come about meeting these individuals?
Friends of mine, Adam Cordova and Jay DeLeon.
Okay, and let's just go ahead and get right into it. What were you doing?
Buying weed. Well, they knew where to get weed from, so I was going with them to buy some weed. They invited me to go with them to go get some weed.
Okay, now you can see how doing this has been getting you in trouble, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now in this incident, who knew where to go?
Jay DeLeon.
All right, and it appears that you were invited, or did you know? Did you know where to go? Were you invited to go?
No, I was invited to go, but I didn't know. It was just to buy weed. I didn't know who we were going to get it from.
Okay, so your understanding was that you were just going to get in a car and go purchase some weed, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you can see how that was wrong now,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir.
With everything that's transpired, you can see that your life has been put in a world of turmoil, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now when going to purchase this, what happened next?
Well, the people we were getting it from, Jay DeLeon exchanged words with them because they shorted him on some weed, so they exchanged words.
So Mr. DeLeon was under the impression that he was shorted,
Yes, yes,
and then what happened after that? Did he feel disrespected?
yes. It was a verbal argument, and he felt disrespected, and the fight broke out.
Okay, and this was a verbal fight or a physical fight?
It was a verbal altercation that turned into a physical altercation.
Okay, and at this point, who was fighting?
Jay DeLeon and Adam Cordova.
Okay. Did Mr. DeLeon and Mr. Cordova already know these individuals?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, Ms. Pinckney, you could mute yourself. And they already knew these individuals?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, and had they done exchangements with them before?
They could have. They could have.
Okay. And the reason I'm getting to this is because in this PSI that I'm looking at, it looks rather incriminating, but at the same time, it's confusing. Okay? So the fight itself was physical, and what transpired next?
Weapon got pulled.
And who pulled this weapon?
Jay DeLeon.
Jay DeLeon, okay. And after this weapon was pulled, what happened?
Basically, it was, them saying like, we're not here to fight. Like, you're going to give us what you owe us, basically.
Okay.
Because they got shorted on the weed.
Okay. And right now, after this happened, what was your mindset?
To leave.
To leave? And did you? Were you able to get out of there?
Yes, I was the first one out. I stepped out.
Okay. Now let me look at this. How big would you say you are, Mr. Pinckney?
I'm 6'4", 6'5".
You're about 6'4", 6'5"? Okay. And you didn't after you guys had left, you didn't understand, or when did you get contact that you had an at-large case?
About 2 weeks after.
Okay, so you weren't aware. And how did, I guess no further questions, Judge. I'm safe for argument.
State,
There's no questions, but I have a rebuttal witness.
all right. Any other witnesses?
No further witnesses, Your Honor.
All right, just so everyone is aware, the court has read the PSI report. And in the PSI report, it clearly states that Mr. Pinckney had a gun and that items were taken by Mr. Pinckney. None of that appears to have been addressed. I've listened to the testimony of the mother saying that mistakes were made. And I really don't call these things mistakes. I call them people making bad choices. So, just so everyone knows, I read the entire PSI report. Mr. Pettis, any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor. No further witnesses.
State, any witnesses?
No witnesses, Judge.
All right, then the court will,
Judge, if I could ask one last question for Mr. Pinckney.
yes.
Mr. Pinckney, do you accept full responsibility?
I accept full responsibility.
Would you agree that this marijuana habit has gotten you into a world of trouble?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you could do things differently, would you?
Yes, sir. I would.
And if you had anything to say to the court, now would be the time to say it.
Your Honor, I'm just asking. I'm not taking any blame off myself, Your Honor. I'm just asking that, I put myself into that situation, not, knowing what could happen.
Well, I mean, now, Mr. Pinckney, here's the thing. Is there anyone here, this is a rhetorical question, but you can answer it. Is there anyone here who knows what could potentially happen if you take a gun and you point it at somebody?
Yes,
Is that something that we do not know? What could happen if you do that, Mr. Pinckney?
Someone could get hurt.
Yeah. And what happens if you take a gun and it has a laser pointer on it and you point it at somebody? What could potentially happen?
It could be used.
What could happen what happens when you go in somebody's house and you tell them to shut the F up and you have a gun on them? What happens? What could potentially happen?
Someone could get hurt.
And where is, this person said their rosary was stolen. Where is that rosary?
I don't have any of the stolen items that were said to be stolen. Yeah.
All right. Now, what I can tell both parties, I've read the PSI report. I know that at this house, people were selling drugs, period. So I know that. I know that people entered this home with guns, 3 defendants, to steal. That nothing in the PSI report states that somebody went there to buy weed and they were shorted weed and arguments happened. What's in the PSI report before me and in the police reports that's stipulated is people were selling drugs out of that house. People knew that there were items in that house that were valuable items. And what I have here is Diaz reported that the defendant sold $2,000 worth of cocaine, $100 worth of marijuana, an unknown amount of money, a $50,000 Rolex watch, a $100,000 platinum necklace, and a television. So that's what we have. So yes, according to everything I'm reading in here, this is what people are saying, and this is in the stipulated evidence. People were selling drugs out of this household. The co-defendants knew they were selling drugs out of this household and that there were items there. And all of these items were stolen during an aggravated robbery. And it's aggravated because the co-defendants, pointed guns at them. So is there something that I'm missing that is not in this PSI report other than the testimony that I've heard from Mr. Pinckney's mom, which I haven't internalized, the fact that yes, he uses weed, which I've internalized, that he has 2 children that now he's discovered he should be taken care of. Is there anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could just point out a few things in this PSI.
Yes.
After reviewing the PSI, Judge, we noticed several things. One, that Jay DeLeon and Alfonso Diaz, complainant, had known each other. Okay, they were on a knowing basis, Judge. It's alleged that there were several injuries, that a girl had broken her bones in her feet. She had an injured back, that a chain was ripped off of her neck, and it's also alleged that somebody was pistol whipped in the back of the head. However, Judge, if you go onto the second page of the official version continued, when the police arrive on scene, all complainants refused EMS, and the police made notation that there did not appear to have any injuries whatsoever. So,
and what I'll say to that, Mr. Pettis, I understand what you're saying to that, and I did read that. Part of the police report, it's stating that the complainant was saying there were prior injuries with the foot in the back. But I understand what you're saying as it relates to the allegation of pistol whipping, and that there were no requests for EMS or to be reviewed by medical by the complainants. Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just to further analyze, Judge, it's also noted in this report that these statements were not made initially at the outset of the call of police. It's indicated on the second page, official version continued at the very bottom, that the complainants were given the opportunity to be taken to night CID to provide statements, but they opted to provide statements at a later time. I think that's... All
right, and that's because people were selling drugs out of the household. I've read it, the report. Drugs were being sold out of the household. These three defendants went there to rob and steal. And yes, they did it at gunpoint.
Yes, Your Honor. And just one last point, Judge, if I could make one.
No, please.
One last point, Your Honor. It's reported. So there's several pages of this report. We've got both official version continued, and we have the narrative, Judge. Now, what seems to not jive with me is we've got an indication of a black firearm being used with the laser on it. Okay. Now, throughout the series of these 3 pages, Judge, we've got different indications, different affirmative indications as to who was carrying that firearm. It's a very specific firearm with the laser on it, Your Honor. And whenever you look at, initially, they indicate that it was Adam Cordova. However, at the same time, they also indicate that it was my client, but they list that my client was 5'3" tall. And that's on the continued version as well. Yes. And I know that you've read it, but I think it's clear to indicate when you compile this with, an expected laceration or some type of concussion with being pistol whipped, and then the identification and so forth. We're not saying that my client is not wrong for being there. We accept full responsibility, Judge. He went there to buy weed, and we're indicating that the way that it's worded, it indicates that there's maybe 4 or 5 individuals and there's only 2 firearms. And with that statement, Judge, not all people can be holding firearms. And these people do know each other to the extent that they had these exchanges before, and they've seen each other and they recognize faces. And the description that was given with the firearm that had the laser on it has 2 inconsistent statements as to who were holding these firearms, Judge. And that's all that we would like to note, but we do take full responsibility. And and that's to the facts, Judge. And lastly, all I will say is that Mr. Pinckney has been out for a year. He's not on any constraints whatsoever in regards to GPS or anything like that. He's been in full compliance with his mental health services as ordered by the court, Judge. He's got a job and he is doing well. He is considering going back to school. He's helping his mother not only take care of his father, but also around the house and financially. And he's also got his 2 children. And looking at this, Judge, I feel that he hasn't gotten any new cases. He doesn't have any violations or any complaints whatsoever. And that's not even being on any constraints at all. In contrast to some of the other co-defendants, Your Honor, some of the other co-defendants had already had previous felonies and had not complied, had cut their GPS off, have been fugitives. Where Brian, on the other hand, Judge, has complied and gone to every hearing, every pretrial hearing. He's gone to every meeting, and he's gone to his PSI, and he's been fully engaged with his medical services, Judge. I do believe that Mr. Pinckney has turned a new leaf, and I would also like to remind the court that he has got about 5 months in the jail that he did. And I think that was a real shock to Mr. Pinckney and how his life is going as a young man. And we hope that the court takes this into consideration, Judge.
All right, State. Is there anything you would like to say?
Just briefly, Judge, in a correction, the PSI says 5'3", but if you look at the stipulated evidence, it says the Brian Pinckney was 6'3", and so I think that's a correction that I should have caught earlier. As far as the facts of this case, we have a victim who are very forthright with the officers. They admitted that they were selling drugs, or at least one of them was. They had no reason to lie. Our victim, Myra Adape, was the one who had her foot stepped on and was threatened at gunpoint by the defendant and told her that he would blast her. I understand that he doesn't have a lot of criminal history, Judge, but this is, the facts of this case are those where prison is appropriate. Their lives are forever changed. She has a kid that she was fearful for. He said the words, but he hasn't actually accepted responsibility for what he did. He gave a different version of the facts. He said a gun came out. It's obvious that he isn't in a place where he's willing to accept responsibility for what he did and change his life. So we're asking that you deny his application.
All right. The court is going to deny the application, find the defendant guilty. Does anyone wish to speak to the cap?
Judge, the state would ask, the co-defendant Adam Cordova pled to 7 years, so we feel that 7 years would be appropriate.
Defense.
Your Honor, we feel that 7 years is excessive, given for the reasons contrasted previously, Judge.
All right. This is what the court is going to do. The court, as previously stated, is finding you guilty, sentence you to a $1,500 fine, sentence you to 7 years in the prison, give you credit for any time served. There's an affirmative finding of deadly weapon.
Come on, Mom. Come on, Mom.
Did you review that document with your attorney? Did you understand it and did you sign it?
Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes it is, you have to have punishment for what you've done. So there's a combination of punishment and rehabilitation. That night, so much could have went wrong. You could be sitting here with capital murder charges if guns would have went off.
Yeah.
Because there's a robbery being committed. And if people are killed, that equals capital murder. Now, I know you have a young child. I know you have an older child. Those are things that should have been thought about before you went to this home.